Well, hello everybody. My name is Chris Tiger, and I'm presenting to you the final project of the Christian Political Thought course. The topic of the project is going to be on patriotism, and more specifically, the issues that are involved inside patriotism, the contemporary issues that we face as a nation today. So I hope that you'll watch this video and consider my ideas and just formulate your own thought, and hopefully we'll agree or we can agree to disagree, but it's just the thought of the issues facing our nation today. So it's the issue of patriotism, more specifically the danger of duality in patriotism. As we see here, there is some protesters who are lined up who are facing a militia, an army, if you will, police force, and there's going to be a standoff. So there is a danger in the duality of patriotism. Coming up this year, on Independence Day, the United States will be celebrating its 250th birthday. Now that sounds like an amazing feat in itself. However, the United States is still relatively young in regard to other civilizations in the world. Some civilizations, ancient civilizations, has lasted for a while, centuries, if you will. So the United States is fairly young in itself. However, there are some issues that need to be addressed, some issues that need to be corrected. And these issues, if we can come together and agree and make the correction, our nation could last longer until the Lord Jesus comes for the church. So that's the United States will be 250 years old this coming 4th of July. At the present time, however, patriotism is at an all-time low as many Americans deem it as unnecessary. Many citizens are upset at the federal government, and they simply do not trust the government or the politicians at the Capitol who are making the laws and who are setting all the rules, if you will, regulations. They don't agree with what they're doing, or they don't understand, or they're just fearful of the government and all the activities going on in Washington. However, there is a need that's still there. The need for support is vital for the survival of the U.S. government. And for that same support to be sustained, the whole of society must re-examine its past. Society, it must reevaluate its founding principles and then initiate a healing process that begins with key leadership positions. If, however, the U.S. government fails to bring the change, the much needed change, there is a danger of duality that could cause an implosion in society. So this implosion become, could transform, if you will, into a second civil war. If the two sides don't agree, can't come to an agreement, the citizens can't come into an agreement, then it could implode and it could be something awful. Here in our slide, we see a picture of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. This person, Dr. Jekyll, he was one man, one person, but he had a split personality. When the ugliness came out, he turned into another person. He turned into Mr. Hyde. And this is similar to our society. We can be great, we can work together, we can accomplish many things. However, if we choose to let that ugliness come out, then we could be just like this Dr. Hyde. Instead, we need to work together and be like Dr. Jekyll and not Mr. Hyde. Duality in patriotism, it refers to the coexistence of contradictory and conflicting aspects of love for the United States. As we see here in our picture, we see the football player taking a knee. Now he's taking a knee during the playing of the national anthem. This highlights that patriotism, it's not a unchanging emotion, but rather a complex and a sometimes toxic idea that can simultaneously serve constructive and destructive purposes. Even though he was taking a knee, he was in protest. He was angry at the injustices that were taking place across the nation during the time, and not only during that time, the current setting, but the history of the United States. So when the national anthem was playing, he was disagreeing with it, he was protesting it. And this led into a nationwide debate. Many of athletes followed his example. Many of commentators, many of people of influence, sport influence, they commended him. Many of people just admired him for what he stood for. Patriotism, the laws in the United States give us a right to protest. And again, it highlights that patriotism is not an unchanging emotion, but a complex and a sometimes toxic idea that simultaneously serves constructive and destructive purposes. But in this case, it brought about change for the good. Just last year, in the year 2025, a record low 58% of U.S. adults, they say that they're extremely proud to be an American, while 41% are very proud, and a mere 17% are moderately proud. Patriotism overall is on a downward spiral, a downward trend, except for the very proud, which is the middle ground of the three. It remains at the same as 41%. So if we look at our chart, there on the right side, 58% are extremely proud, if you will. They are happy, they wave the flags, they spend the money at the 4th of July celebrations, they get out and vote, and they protest. They're extremely proud to be an American. Even that has declined. If you look at the left side, back in the year 2001, it was at 87%. So this going throughout the years, it's gone up, it's gone down, it's gone up, it's gone down. But just last year, it dropped to 58% from that 87% back in 2001. And then that middle ground, the very proud, they're at a steady 41%. However, that's still down from the 55% there on the left side back in 2001. And then we see the very bottom, the moderately proud, the ones who are so, they say they're proud, but they really don't express it. They're just moderately proud. Last year, in the year 2025, that was registered at 17%. And while 25 years ago, or 24 years ago, back in 2001, it was at 32%. So over the past 25 years, there has been a decline in this extremely trend. So we see patriotism has slowly gone down throughout the years. That duality is on the rise. Individuals are saying they're happy to be an American, yet they're not supporting the American system. So let's look at some key issues here. What are some of the driving factors that are leading to the duality of patriotism? So in the name of the country, meaning in the name of the United States, we see different races and what happened to these races of people. For the American Indian, we see the genocide of their race. The Native Americans, the first civilization, the first society that was here, have been moved from their home, and a lot of them were moved to the Indian country, Oklahoma, if you will, Trail of Tears, and their families have been murdered, have been killed, have been facing genocide, and now they were once a strong civilization population. Now they're dwindled down to a small amount of people in the name of the country, in the name of the United States. Second thing is the enslavement of another. We see the African Americans, how they were enslaved. They were brought over by the slave trade and they were forced to work to appease, to support the white race, the Anglo Americans, the ones who were in charge, the ones who held the position of government, the ones who could vote, the ones who could make the laws and pass the laws. They're the ones that enslaved the African Americans. And then on the third part, there to the left or your right, we see the theft of other lands, and this is the Hispanics. When you go out to the west, such as New Mexico, Arizona, California, all of that area was all it was held by the Hispanics, which they got forced out in the Mexican War, and then the Native Americans that were out there, they were forced to be removed or they were forced to shrink their land for their survival. So these are some driving factors in the duality of patriotism. They're all citizens, but yet they still hold those hurtful feelings, those hard feelings of their past, of their culture, of what their families, their grandparents, their grandparents went through. They still hold that, and it's just needs to be healed because it's hurting them even in this day. So that's one of the driving factors that are leading to the duality of patriotism. When the phrase "Make America Great Again" is used, most people of color they remember the shaping of the nation. So back in the 1920s, we see white supremacists in the U.S. history, and then we see in the 1970s the America First for whites. Then in the 2020s, we see that same phrase today, America First. So whenever we hear the phrase "Make America Great Again," most people of color, they remember what has happened to their ethnicity, to their families. They still carry that hurt. And they remember the shaping of the nation. They remember the group that was in control, making the laws, enforcing the laws. So that's another factor that leads into the duality of patriotism. America itself, the society, must come to terms with the reckoning of the idea of white supremacy. So here we see this was taking place back in the 1960s era, if you will. There was a police officer and he is detaining young black men. He's got his rifle there in his hand and he's forcing them to line up against the wall. Also, during that time of the 60s, you had the Jim Crow laws, you had the segregation. There was a place for white folks and there was a place for the colored people. The colored people, their place was often run down, dilapidated, and it's just awful situations, while the white folks, theirs was upkept. It was nice. So that was another issue that leads into duality and patriotism. So what are some ways that nations could heal itself from the dangers of dualism? Well, instead of removing statues, we can amend them to reflect the philosophy of the person as a slave owner. Here we see Jefferson Davis, the President of the Confederate States of America, who was a slave owner. Instead of removing his statue, amend it. Let the truth be known of what kind of person he was, his character. He was a slave owner, a slave trader. Instead of covering up the truth, memorials could be displayed showing the horrors of what took place during the slave trade. So here we see a family in chains around their neck being ripped apart. This wife is losing her husband. He's probably going to go out to the fields. She's holding a baby, but that family is being split apart. So instead of trying to hide this truth, we could display it to show healing, to start the process, to display the horrors of what actually took place, the truth in the shaping of the American society. Also, state legislators should not prevent students from learning the role race has played in our country, banning crucial race theory. Now, this theory talks about how a ethnicity of people were held down for so long and why it's hard for that group to bring itself up to equal level with the master race, if you will. It talks about this theory, this idea. How can we bring other races into equal level grounds as the ones who are making the laws, the ones who are in power and authority? So the state legislator should not prevent students from learning about this, but to accept this and to change it, to make it more knowledgeable for everybody. So everybody can come to the consensus, yes, this is bad and we need to heal it, we need to correct it. The injustices of the nation must not be forgotten if the whole of society wants to move forward into principles of the founding fathers. Healing must come internally as each ethnicity and background is accepted. Then we can truly understand the meaning of patriotism. So that meaning of the founding fathers, patriotism, it's a deep devotion of love, an emotional relationship, and a sense of attachment to one's country that extends beyond mere pride, but to include willingness, a willingness to support its laws, a willingness in its well-being and uphold its guiding principles. Patriotism, it involves identifying with its people, its history, its values. It displays itself as both a self-importance and a commitment to improving the nation through sacrifice and service by caring for its citizens and the shared belief in the value of the nation. Patriotism, identifying with its people. For patriotism to grow, it must be held accountable to its ideas by encompassing a shared culture, honest politics, and a candid approach, a truthful approach to its historical events. So, in order for it to grow, this must take place. Patriotism, it's about sacrificing to keeping the country moving, to keep it growing. It's about paying taxes appropriate to your wealth. Patriotism is about sacrifice, about paying workers a decent wage so they can pay their bills and have extra to treat their families. Patriotism is about the guilty being held accountable and being punished for their crimes. Patriotism is about policing agencies being held accountable for the taking of life. The policing agency being held accountable for the taking of life. As more can be argued, one thing is certain: there is no easy solution to correcting the problem of dualism and patriotism. If, however, American society as a Christian nation chose to follow the teachings in the Bible, the nation would be stronger and more stable. Only then, the Pledge of Allegiance, when it's given, it could truly mean something. And these are the sources. And again, I hope that you consider my ideas. More can be said, more can be argued, but this is just to get us thinking about the duality and patriotism and how we can heal and move forward and become one nation as a whole, one society, again, until the Lord Jesus comes back for the church.